It was a crisp autumn morning when Lily Walker stood at the threshold of the barn, staring out over the vast, overgrown fields of her family farm. The farm had been in her family for generations, but after her parents passed, it had become more of a burden than a source of pride. Lily, a single mother of two, had always been determined to keep the farm alive, even though it felt like it was falling apart around her. The barn, in particular, had been a constant reminder of all the work that still needed to be done. The roof was sagging, the walls were rotting, and the inside was filled with decades of forgotten tools, dusty equipment, and piles of old junk. That morning, as the sun barely peeked over the horizon, she decided it was time to finally clean the barn. She had put it off long enough, and the promise of a free afternoon with her kids spurred her into action. Little did she know, this routine task would alter the course of her life in ways she could never have imagined. As she stepped into the dark barn, the familiar smell of musty wood and hay filled the air. The dim light coming through the cracks in the barn's aging wooden walls barely illuminated the cluttered space. The dust settled in thick clouds around her as she began moving boxes and old crates, all while wondering what on earth she might find. Most of the things inside had been forgotten, abandoned relics of a time when her parents were alive. She didn't know where to begin, so she started with the box closest to her. Inside she found a strange assortment of items: old farming manuals, rusted tools, and a few family keepsakes. But as she dug deeper, her fingers brushed against something smooth and cold. She pulled it out, dusting it off carefully. It was an old leather-bound folder, its edges worn with time but still sturdy. She opened it cautiously, expecting to find more random notes from her grandfather, who had been a farmer and inventor in his younger years. But what she found inside was unlike anything she had ever seen before. Inside the folder were several large blueprints, meticulously drawn and marked with measurements and annotations. The paper had yellowed with age, but the designs were clear, precise, and strangely sophisticated. They were engineering blueprints, but for what? The diagrams seemed to be for a machine, a complex mechanism she couldn't quite understand. Some kind of engine, but it was unlike anything she had ever seen on the farm. Lily's heart raced as she traced her fingers over the blueprints. The drawings seemed to belong to something far more advanced than any farming equipment her grandfather had ever designed. As she flipped through the pages, the complexity of the designs became apparent. There were references to propulsion systems, gears, and engines that looked like they could be part of a much larger invention. There were notes written in the margins, some in shorthand, others in a technical language Lily couldn't decipher. And then her eyes fell on something even more surprising. A name, Dr. Henry Walker, written in bold, handwritten letters at the top of the first page. Her grandfather's name, the same name she had seen on family documents her entire life. Lily stared at it for a long time, her mind spinning. Her grandfather had been an inventor. Yes, but never anything like this. He had spent years tinkering with machinery, creating odd gadgets to help with farming. But this was far beyond anything she had ever imagined. As she studied the plans, Lily realized that what her grandfather had been working on was no ordinary invention. These blueprints were for something revolutionary, something that could change the way the world worked. The machine seemed to be a propulsion system, and it looked like it was designed for something far bigger than just a farm tool. The more she looked, the more it became clear to her. These plans weren't just a personal project. They were something that had the potential to alter industries, maybe even change history. Her hands trembled as she carefully placed the blueprints back in the folder. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just uncovered something incredibly important. But the questions kept racing through her mind. Why had her grandfather kept these plans hidden? And why had he never mentioned them? If these plans were so important, why had they been left in an old barn to be buried in dust and forgotten? Lily's thoughts raced, and with a sudden urgency she realized that someone else might be looking for these plans, someone who knew their value. Her grandfather had been a humble farmer. How could he have kept something so significant a secret? And why hadn't anyone in the family known about it? She looked around the barn, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't the only one who had just discovered these blueprints. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that this discovery might not have. The morning after the discovery, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that her life had taken a turn she couldn't understand. It was as if everything she had known was now in question. Her simple farm, her quiet life, everything had been upended in one evening. She had spent most of the night staring at the blueprints, the designs for the propulsion system, her grandfather's handwriting filling her mind. It all seemed so impossible. A machine like that, hidden in her family barn? It was too much to process, yet it felt so real. Lily spent most of the morning pacing the farmhouse, her thoughts tangled in the complexity of the plans. She'd kept the folder under lock and key in her room, unsure of what to do with it. She knew she couldn't go to anyone in town. Ethan, the only person she trusted with something this serious, would have to be the first person she reached out to. But as she pondered what to do next, another feeling gnawed at her. Someone was looking for those blueprints. Someone had to be. As the afternoon rolled around, Lily took a deep breath and called Ethan. His voice was strained as it came through the phone, a mix of concern and curiosity. "What's going on, Lily? You sounded urgent on the phone." I found something." Lily started, her words faltering. "Something in the barn, something important." She paused, trying to find the right words. "I think it's connected to my grandfather." There was silence on the other end for a moment. "Your grandfather?" Ethan's voice became serious. "Lily, what did you find?" Lily went on to explain the discovery of the blueprints, how her grandfather had kept them hidden, the propulsion system, and the unsettling feeling that followed. She told Ethan everything she could remember, her voice shaking as she recalled the intricate details of the design. "I can't make sense of it, Ethan. It doesn't seem like anything he would have worked on. This isn't farming equipment," Lily said, pacing around the room as she spoke. "I'm not sure what it is, but I know it's not just some old invention. It feels like it's something bigger." Ethan's voice was quieter now. "I knew your grandfather was brilliant, but I never knew he'd been involved in something like this. Those plans, they could be something major, something more than just an invention." Lily felt a rush of cold air as the conversation continued. She wasn't sure if it was the weather or the growing realization that this was no ordinary blueprint. "I have to know what this is, Ethan. I need your help." Ethan sighed deeply. "I'll be there as soon as I can. You need to be careful, Lily. This isn't just about some old project your grandfather was working on. If what you're saying is true, there are people who'll be looking for those plans." Her stomach dropped at the thought. "Who?" Lily asked, her voice a whisper. "You'll find out soon enough. Don't trust anyone but me right now," Ethan replied, his tone grim. "I'll help you figure this out." Hanging up, Lily sat back in the chair, her mind racing. She had no idea how much danger she had just walked into. Ethan's warning hadn't been just a casual remark. It was clear that whatever her grandfather had been working on had serious implications. Lily knew she had to find out the truth, but she wasn't sure how far the rabbit hole went. Hours passed in a blur as Lily waited for Ethan to arrive. When he finally showed up, his face was taut with concern. He walked through the front door and straight to the room where Lily had hidden the blueprints. She handed him the folder, her hands shaking as she did. He opened it immediately and began to study the designs closely, his brow furrowed in concentration. Lily stood behind him, watching him closely. The silence in the room was thick with tension. After a few moments, Ethan closed the folder slowly and turned to face her. "Lily," he said quietly, "these blueprints, this isn't just some invention. This is a propulsion system. It's not for a car, not for farming equipment. This is military-grade technology. Your grandfather wasn't just a farmer." Lily's heart raced in her chest. "What do you mean? What are you saying?" Ethan sighed. "I think your grandfather was part of a government project, something classified. These plans, they're not for civilian use. The propulsion system here, it could change how we understand travel, possibly even space travel." Lily stumbled back, her knees nearly giving out. "Space travel? Are you saying he was working with NASA?" Ethan shook his head. "Not just NASA, Lily. This goes deeper. The military, government agencies, they were all involved. Your grandfather was working on something huge, and when it was discovered that he was close to a breakthrough, the project was shut down. But these plans,